Hi, welcome to our homemade pasta class. Let's give it a minute to load. Oh, there we go. Hi, welcome to our homemade pasta class. I'm Tara, I'm the owner of Yummy Sprout and one of the instructors. And this is my daughter and assistant, Isla, who loves to cook with me. So if you're joining us live, awesome. If you're not joining us live, you can go ahead and grab the recipe, the ingredient list. All of that stuff is on our website as well as our Facebook page. You can find everything that you need there. The tools, the ingredients, and then we posted this morning on our Facebook page the recipes as well as a little pasta guide too, just kind of a fun little thing. It shows some different styles of pasta, which we're going to kind of talk about a few of them and show you some ways to make those, as well as some ways to make just like your own creative, whatever you want style pasta. It doesn't have to be
a type like
it doesn't have to be a traditional type, like penne or what's your favorite type of pasta?
Macaroni.
Macaroni or elbow is your favorite? Yeah, that is good. I don't know. I feel like I like a lot of styles, but I really like the shell style. That one's really yummy. Yeah. I mean, they all taste the same. You know, we're going to make one dough.
Different shapes.
But there's some reason why different shapes are better to different people. I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes in the noodles that we have, there's like different noodles, like one.
Oh, yeah. That's how today is going to be. We're going to try some different noodles, and then we'll cook some of them. We'll just play around with what we want to do, and we'll show everybody how to do it. So homemade pasta, it seems something that would be really hard, really tricky, but it's actually not that hard. I mean, it's a little bit tricky if you've never done it before, but it's not as hard as I thought it would be the first time I ever made it. And it's a real treat. It's different than having boxed pasta. Boxed pasta is good, but there's something really awesome about fresh pasta. So we're going to give that a go and show you how to make it. And pasta is really simple. It's pretty much just flour and water or liquid. We're going to have some eggs in ours and stuff, but it's pretty basic to make a dough for pasta. So we're going to get started. If you've got all your ingredients ready to go and your tools, we'll talk a little bit more when we get to the actual pasta making and forming, but we've got some different things that we found to use. So if you want to scrounge around your kitchen a little, and you'll have time for sure when we get into making the pasta to look for stuff. We've got some straws here that we're going to use when we make the pasta, and we've got a pizza wheel we're going to use, and a little pastry crimper, which kind of makes a little crimped edge. We also have a little cork here that has some ridges in it. So if you have something with ridges in it, yep, I love this like little cookie cutter. Or we've also got, this is a little cut. It's a cutter. So like if you want to cut, we use it a lot to cut like carrots, wavy carrots, or wavy fries if you're making homemade fries. But it's got these ridges here. So it's going to be fun when we're making pasta to kind of see what shapes and things we can get with that. So when you get a chance, if you want to scrounge around your kitchen and look for some cool tools that might help you in the pasta making, we're going to get really creative. There's no wrong way, and you can really make your pasta look how you want to make it. Right, Isla? Yeah.
Right.
So let's get started on the dough. The first thing you need is your big bowl. I'm kind of using a sort of shallowish bowl, but it's wide, which is perfect. Sometimes you see some videos of homemade pasta, or you might see like a traditional where they just make it on a counter, and you could do that too, but that's a little messier than I want to do. And you can also just make it in a food processor too, and that'll really help make your dough. I like to do it this way. I find that it's kind of fun and it's not too complicated. So we're going to use a sifter. I'm kind of using a mesh sieve here. You can use any sifter that you have, and we're going to add our flour first. So we've got 2 cups of flour here, all purpose. You can add whatever flour that you have on hand. I've not tried this recipe with every type of flour, so I'm not 100% sure how it might work with some different types like gluten-free flours and stuff. But if you have an all-purpose, or if you're using a gluten-free similar all-purpose or a 1-to-1 type of thing that's supposed to be like regular flour, that would be my best bet. So let's dump this into the sifter, and then Isla, you sift it into the bowl, okay? All right, so 2 cups of flour. And again, you can find the recipes right on our page. So if you want to follow along and make sure you have the ingredients right, the amounts right. So we're adding 2 cups of all-purpose flour. We're just sifting it into the bowl. And while she's sifting, I'm going to add in some salt. I'm adding in 1 teaspoon of salt. And she'll just kind of sift that through with a little bit of flour. There you go. So 1 teaspoon of salt. You can either whisk it into the flour or you can put it right through the sifter, either way. All right, lovely. Now I'm going to have you sift this up, okay? So just sift it up, and then when you're sifting, you want to make what we call a well in the middle of the bowl. That means we want to see a really thin, we want to see that metal. It's like you're making a hole and you're pushing the flour out to the edges of the bowl, and that's called a well when you're cooking. It's just make that well in the center of your bowl. Nice. It looks great. So I want to show, but I feel if I tip it up too much, we'll lose your well, but I'll lift it. Oh, you can definitely see how you can see the bottom of the bowl there. And depending on the bowl you're using, you might not be able to see the bottom of your bowl, and that's totally fine. But just kind of push that flour up the sides.
There's like a thin layer.
So there's a thin layer kind of at the bottom. And now, do you know what I'm going to say next?
No.
Oh, okay. We want to guess. What do you think we're going to add?
Eggs.
Oh, she's so good. We're going to add eggs. So we're going to crack 3 eggs right into the middle of that well. We're not going to whisk them in yet. We're going to start just by cracking. So first I'll demonstrate, and then I'll have you do the other 2, how we like to crack eggs, sort of an easy way that we find for cracking eggs. And a lot of people, sometimes when we have culinary classes, some kids are all excited and they do a lot of egg cracking, and others are a little nervous because they're not sure and they don't want to get shell in the bowl. But we're going to show you nothing to be nervous about. I get shell in the bowl all the time.
Yeah.
So what you do is you want to crack your egg on the side of the container you want it to go into. 1 firm tap is going to give you a little bit of a hole or a crack. You're going to push your thumbs into that crack and break it apart, and the egg will fall right down. If you do get shell, what do?
You take like the half or a little piece that's bigger than the shell. You scoop it, and then you get that tiny shell out, and then you pour the rest of the goop stuff.
Oh my gosh, you're 100% right. The shells, they stick to each other. They like each other, so you can use a piece of the shell to scoop out any shell. Yeah.
Do we have to have the egg whole like this or not?
You mean like if it breaks open when it falls? Yeah, that's totally fine. We are going to mix it into the pasta. We just want to start by getting our eggs right into the center of the bowl the best we can. Ooh, nice. So that's 2, and she's adding 1 more. We need a total of 3 eggs. There you go. Yeah, that one, the yolk broke. See, that's totally fine. All right, you can wipe your hands on your apron, or you can use a towel over there.
I'll wipe my hands.
Okay, or you can always wash your hands. We washed our hands before we started. But whenever you're cooking, if you find that it's getting a little messy and you want to take a break to wash your hands, go for it. Some people love their hands messy, and other people don't like you. So before we whisk it up, we're so close. We're going to add a little bit of olive oil. So we need to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and then we've got 2 tablespoons of water, and I've just put my water, in a measuring cup, but then I've put a teaspoon in here because we want to add the water a teaspoon at a time as we're mixing, because we don't want to add too much water. We don't want to add not enough. So we're going to kind of add it slowly, but we're going to start with the olive oil, and then we'll whisk it up. So we need 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Here, you hold this. This bottle's a little heavy. And then just pour it right kind of on top of the eggs, sort of the best you can. Perfect. 1, 2. 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Lovely. Now, before we add the water, I'm going to have you start whisking. What you're going to do is you're just going to whisk in the middle first, sort of whisk those eggs up, and then gently start pulling in that flour, okay? Poking those eggs, good. I feel like poking the eggs really does help them whisk faster.
If you're using a fork, that works really good.
Yeah, fork works really well too for whisking eggs. But for this dough, it's probably good to start with a whisk. Nice, and now she's pulling that flour into that mixture. All right, do you want to trade jobs and you add the water?
Yeah.
All right, give me 1 second before you add the water so I can get a good look at the
So
thickness.
it's just like room temperature water?
It's just room temperature water. You could use cold water, but I think room temperature water works a little best. So now that I'm
Tap
mixing
water.
it in, I've kind of got this dry, clumpy dough. It's very dry with a little bit of egg goop here and there. So it's time to start adding that water. So go ahead, add 1 teaspoon of water, and then we'll just kind of mix that in. Now, another. Perfect. Ooh, this is starting to look really good. Add 1 more. Let me mix a little more and I'll tell you if we need to add any more water. It's starting to look really good. And it's gonna look kind of clumpy. We're gonna be spending some time kneading it, so it's gonna come together to a nice dough. Don't
At least
worry.
it's not like really hard Play-Doh.
Yeah, it looks a lot like Play-Doh right now. All right, add 1 more. I think it's still a little on the dry side. In total, you should be adding about 2 tablespoons of water. It might be a little less than that.
Or more.
We're just kind of adding it a teaspoon at a time.
We added 4 teaspoons.
4 teaspoons, and there's about, I think it's 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon, something close to that. I'm not 100% sure. I did measure out the water ahead of time though. All right, let's do 1 more. It's looking really good. And we can always add a little more flour when we're kneading if we get it a little too wet. But this looks pretty good. I'll kind of show a little bit of a close-up of the dough. It's pretty crumbly looking, but that's okay because we're going to be kneading it and getting that elasticy feeling
And that's going to be
going.
when you get your hands messy.
That is when we're going to get our hands a little messy.
I think this recipe is super fun to do today because it's really rainy outside.
It's super rainy here in Wisconsin, so if it's raining where you are, this is the perfect activity, making some homemade pasta. And then you'll have lunch ready, so.
Yeah.
Or dinner, you could save it for dinner too. All right, so let's get some parchment and then split the dough and we'll both knead it and we'll demonstrate how to knead it. And I've got a little extra flour. So I'm just grabbing some parchment paper to put on my counter because it just helps with cleanup and then the dough doesn't stick to it either. So, and I'm gonna put a little extra flour down on our parchment.
So it's
Just-
better.
Yeah, just to help us so it's not too sticky. And then I'm gonna squish this dough. This dough is nice. And I'm gonna split it in half so we can both take some to knead, okay?
Okay.
We give you a
can
nice
use
ball of
split it.
dough.
No.
Well, not yet. First we have to
measure
knead it. We'll use that when we're shaping it, okay?
Okay.
All right, go ahead. Do you remember the kneading process?
Punch, punch, and fold.
Punch, punch, fold
So you don't
one
actually use
way.
your fist, you use your palm.
What do you use? So, yeah, you use the heel of your palm, kind of. All right,
Punch.
that looks good. All right, so what I was showing is one kneading technique you can do is
Punch,
use this part of your palm and punch,
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 and then
fold the
fold it
dough
over.
over, but you have to just keep doing that till you get all the dough kneaded. Now, if the recipe says knead the dough for 10 minutes, that's kind of a long time, and that's why a lot of people like to use a food processor because they don't like to knead it as long.
I like kneading.
I do too. I don't know if today for showing we'll knead for a full 10 minutes, but we're gonna knead it for a little bit here. Some other ways that you can knead are just like you would just squish it back in your hands back and forth. Basically what you're doing is you're activating the gluten in the flour, assuming you're using gluten flour. And that's sort of what's gonna give it that elasticy, stretchy feeling. And we're kind of looking
And
for
that's how
a
you're gonna
rubber
shape
bandish consistency to our dough when we start making that pasta.
Feels sticky.
Yep, it's the more you knead it, the more you're getting a smooth sort of uniform feeling dough. You can see the difference in my dough here from when I first pulled it out of the pan and it was super crumbly. Yeah, yours is looking great, Isla. Punch, punch, fold.
Fold.
Punch, punch,
It could be like a kneading song.
Yeah, a kneading song. We should write a song called Punch Punch Fold. What do you think?
Funny.
We could do it. It could be a really cool, be the next most popular song. Okay, this is looking really, really good. Now, what we want to do when we're done kneading our dough, which will be done in, we'll take a few more minutes to knead it, is we want to let it rest for a little bit. So we'll let it rest and we'll work on our pesto that we're making to top our pasta. And then we'll be able to roll it out. And we're going to be rolling it really thin. And so we'll definitely be using our, what do I call these babies?
Elbow grease.
Elbow grease or your culinary muscles. We'll be using a little bit of those today to roll it out. Now, if you have a pasta machine, one of those little crankable, kind of old school things that you can slip the dough through, that will, you won't need as much culinary muscles, just the winding. We don't have one of those. That would be pretty fun to get. That would be cool. But whenever we do this class or we make it at home, we always just roll it by hand. So this is extremely therapeutic, you guys, this kneading process. It's something that you can just do. It's like, sort of like yeah, if you do it too much, you might be like, oh, I had my workout today, my arm workout, I'm doing my arms. It's kind of like when you play with Play-Doh or clay and stuff, there's something very therapeutic about working the dough and just kind of, I feel like my dough looks really good. Let me see yours. Oh, brilliant. Let's show our dough. So see, it looks pretty uniform, really well kneaded. And we're just gonna rest it. So can you hear that rain out there?
It's like I can't even see anything out there.
Yeah, it's very, very wet out there. So spring rain, it's still April. So April showers, spring, May.
Flowers.
We hope, May flowers. All right, so I think this spring, a lot of us are gonna be spending a lot of time outside.
If it's not raining.
If it's not raining, yeah. So let's rest our dough. And while we're resting our dough, we're gonna work on our pesto. And then we're gonna come back and do what is really, truly my favorite part. Shaping. My favorite part of the recipe is definitely shaping and forming the dough. It's so fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, Jamie says Zoe's caught up now and loving it. Hi, Zoe. Awesome. I am so excited for everyone to get to make this pasta. All right. So we're going to take a little break, work on our pesto. So we're going to use a food processor to make the pesto, or you can also use a blender if that's what you have. So you might need a grown-up's help for this part to use it. So what I like to do is just kind of bring the food processor over to where I'm adding stuff, and then I'll take it back over there to blend it up. Just be careful when you're adding the ingredients not to stick your hand all the way in or near the blade, because I have made that mistake before, and the blade's really sharp, which is good for blending up your pesto, but not so good for putting your hand in it, right, Nyla?
Right.
All right, so what we're going to do, our pesto is super easy. Basically, pesto is just blending a whole bunch of stuff together in a blender or a food processor to make a sauce. It's so easy. So today we're using spinach. A lot of times when we make this, I like to use spinach and basil.
Yeah.
Basil is what you traditionally use in pesto. In fact, whenever I'm cutting basil, you always come downstairs and you say, ooh, are we making pesto, right? You're like, I smell pesto, because it's such, you smell that pesto and it really makes you think, or you smell that basil, it really makes you think of pesto. But I've made pesto with spinach and other greens lots of times. And what I usually do is I add part spinach, part basil, because basil is kind of expensive and you usually get a small bunch of it. So then when I mix in the spinach, you kind of get a larger quantity of pesto and you still have that great basil flavor. Today we don't have any basil, but we're going to make just spinach pesto, which it'll be delicious. It's still delicious because you still get that lemon and that garlic and all that yummy flavor.
What's this flour for?
That was the flour we were using for
kneading.
Yeah. So we're going to start by adding, can you add the spinach? So you're going to want to add in about a cup of spinach or a cup and a half if you're not using basil. So the recipe says a cup of spinach and a half a cup of basil, basically about a cup and a half of greens, whatever combination you want to do. If you have all basil, you could add all basil. We're doing all spinach today since that's what we have.
Last time we made pesto, we used it all up.
Oh yeah, we did. You know, we love to make pesto for pasta, and then we'll keep it in the fridge and we'll use it on pizza or even sandwiches. It's super good, just spread like on a grilled cheese or something. So now we're gonna take a lemon and we're gonna just, before we add the juice, we're gonna zest a tiny bit of it into here. So we don't need a lot, but the zest has so much flavor that if we zest up a little bit, it'll just give it a little extra punch. So if you have a zester or even just a grater, and again, be careful not to touch your fingers to the sharp part because it does not feel very good. So I'm gonna let Isla add in a little zest and I'm gonna get our juicer. I think that's perfect.
Yeah.
So we didn't add in a ton, just a little bit from the side, but it'll really pack an awesome punch, especially for our pesto where we don't have that basil, we can get a little extra lemon. So I'm gonna have you go ahead and cut the lemon and then we'll juice it. Can you, before you cut it, can you talk real quick about the knife skills?
Okay, so the knife skills are like knife safety. So you always want to make sure your hands are tucked in
What
like
do
a
we call
C,
that? Yep.
claw, C, whatever.
Claw or C.
And at the end of what you're cutting, and then you want to make sure when you're not cutting, your knife is down, and if it has a cap, the cap's on.
Mm-hmm. Good. And when you're ready to cut, you're going to keep your hand in that claw, right? So that your fingers are tucked and the knife won't go on them. So just cut the lemon in half and we're going to juice half of that lemon into our pesto. There you go.
It's kind of slippery.
It's a little slippery here. How about I get it started? There we go.
Thanks.
It's not the freshest lemon. We've had it for like over a week, so it's getting a little dimply. And sometimes that makes it harder to cut. So go ahead and squeeze all that juice. You can just squeeze it with your hand.
Or if you have one of those like,
or one of those squeezers. If you notice some seeds get in there, you can use a spoon to scoop them out.
We
We're just
have
going to
one
use a
with
little
a
twisty juicer. Yeah.
do you have one with like a seed hole thing? So seeds don't get in?
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Oh, that lemon juice smells so good. If you were juicing lemons right now,
Yeah.
That smells so fresh.
But you don't want to taste it plain.
You know what? Yeah, I'm not a big fan of straight lemon juice, although I have had lots of kids at classes and camps that lime and lemon, they want to suck on the leftover lemon and lime. They like it. They like that sour. Like,
I don't know how they can stand that.
I know. I love lemon, but I don't think I could eat just plain lemon or drink plain lemon juice. So, ooh, she did a really good job. She got all that juice out. So here, let me just move this a little. Yeah, go ahead and pour the juice into there.
Seeds. Oh, there's a lot of seeds in this one.
Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to have you get the garlic ready here. So we've got a clove of garlic. All we want to do is we don't need to cut the garlic up because we're going to let the food processor do that. We want to get this sort of papery skin off. So I'm just going to have you cut that hard end at the bottom and then we'll be able to peel the papery skin.
Here.
Good job keeping your fingers tucked. Yep, just like that. Now you should be able to peel off the papery skin.
And then once you peel it off, you should feel this shiny skin.
Yeah, it feels sort of shiny and smooth like a pebble almost. So go ahead and put that clove of garlic. We're just adding 1 clove of garlic. If you really like garlic, you could go up to 2, or if you are not a big garlic fan, you could take it down to half a garlic. 1 clove seems to be just the right amount for this recipe. Next, we're going to add in some nuts. Now, traditionally, pesto is made with pine nuts. We don't have any pine nuts. We often use cashews. You can also use seeds like sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds are good. We've used those before. Or you can just leave them out too if you need to make it completely nut and seed free. So I think for nuts we add about a 1/3 cup or so. We have like just about the right amount if you want to dump the whole rest of this bag of our cashews left. We are on the last bits of our cashew.
They're going to have to buy some more.
Yeah, we are. We are very low on that, which we use them for a lot of different things. So now we've got our cashews in, and we're going to add in some cheese. Now you can really add in any type of cheese.
We're using cream cheese.
Well, it's kind of like cream cheese. This is sort of like a ricotta. It's a lot like goat cheese. This one's made from almond milk, so we're kind of making a dairy-free version, but you could definitely use cream cheese. You could use some goat cheese. You could use Parmesan. You could use
mozzarella.
Mozzarella. Well, mozzarella you could try it, but like fresh mozzarella, the texture might be a little tricky. But pretty much any cheese, usually a soft cheese or like a dry crumbly cheese works best. So go ahead and scoop all that cheese in there. And that's about a quarter cup or so.
Smells so good.
It does smell good. Now we're going to add in some salt and pepper, and that's it. That's really all we need.
Mm-hmm.
So here.
So pepper here.
Salt and pepper is just kind of, well, we also need olive oil, sorry, but that's all we need to add first. So here, let's take a little bit, like, how about like maybe 2 pinches of pepper?
Okay. You don't want too much pepper.
1, 2. So this, a lot of times, it says on the recipe to taste. So sometimes people like to blend it up first, then kind of slowly add the salt to taste. Otherwise, if you want to add your salt first, about a 1/2 teaspoon or so is usually good. So people will add a little less, and then if we can add a little more if it's not salty enough. Once you get it too salty, it's really hard to undo that, but if it's not salty enough, you can always add more salt. So, okay, go ahead and sort of sprinkle that in. Nice. So now we're going to blend it up, and then while we're blending, I'm going to stream in our olive oil. So you could just add your olive oil right now and blend it up. That's totally fine. Or if you have a food processor with a spout or a place to pour, while it's blending, you can add your olive oil and sort of stream it in, which is what the recipe says. It just helps make a smooth, creamy pesto, but you can do it either way. And for olive oil, you need about 1/4 to 1/2 cup. I usually start with 1/4 cup and then add more if it feels like it's a little chunky or I want to make it a little smoother. So I'll measure this out and then add it while we're blending it. So I think what we'll do is I'm going to bring this over here. I'll come over here and start blending our pesto. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to have you start working on rolling out our dough, because that's going to take us a little while.
I'm going to go wash my hands.
Oh, you can wash them in the sink here. Okay. All right, so she's going to wash her hands, and then I'm going to blend up our pesto right over there, and she's going to start rolling out our dough. This is the part that's going to take a little while. Ooh, it's perfect. Look at that stretch. Remember I said elastic? Oh, yeah, that's perfect. So we're going to try to roll our dough really, really thin, about 1/4 inch thickness, as thin as we can possibly get it. So we've got our rolling pins here, and we're just going to roll till we can get a really thin sheet of dough. Mm-hmm. When we have that really thin sheet of dough, we'll start shaping it into different pastas. And then we'll also give it a few minutes to dry a little bit before we cook it. One of the great things about fresh pasta is it only takes a few minutes to cook. Unlike dried pasta that takes about 10 minutes to boil, this takes 2 to 4 minutes or so.
That's
it's really
short,
quick.
yeah.
Okay, you start rolling out your dough while I blend this up, and we're just gonna take our time. We want to get it really thin.
Sort of like those croissants.
Yeah, a little bit. We're gonna get it even thinner, I think, than we did with the croissants.
Sometimes flipping it over after you roll it works too.
All right, here comes the food processor. All right, and I'm going to scrape down the sides of my food processor and let it blend up just a little more. It's looking really good. And sort of depending on what type of cheese you use and how much of the greens you add, your color might be a little different. Ours is kind of a lightish green because we added a lot of the cheese. If you notice some of the stuff is sticking to the side of your blender or food processor, you could just use a spatula to kind of scrape the sides. I think our pesto is almost ready. One more blend. All right. our pesto looks good. I'm going to show everybody what it looks like here. Kind of get a look at this nice green pesto. Ours is very creamy because of all that cheese. And then when you add it to pasta, it goes a lot farther than it looks. So like you would use a lot less pesto than you might use of, say, a red sauce. Because once it kind of gets into that warm pasta, it thins out even more and blends up. So what we're going to go ahead and do is just set this aside for now. We're going to use it in just a little bit for our pasta. Ooh, you're doing really good at rolling that out. And then usually there's some leftover pesto, and so you can just store that in an airtight container or a jar. It'll keep in the fridge for up to like, I don't know, I would say a week or so, and then you could keep it in the freezer for up to 3 months or more, and then just defrost it when you're ready to use it. Really thin, and it takes some muscles for sure. I'm actually going to pull out our big rolling pin too, I think. And what I'm going to do right now while we're working on our pasta is I'm going to turn on the stove. So I have a really big stock pot for cooking my pasta. That's one of the tricks for homemade pasta that I recommend is using a fairly large pot if you can get one. A stock pot, one to make soup is usually really good. Just to make sure that the pasta has plenty of space. If you use too small of a pot, it'll just stick together a lot more, and this will really help prevent that. So I've already added water into this pot. I filled it up about halfway. And I'm going to add in just a little bit of salt as well, because the salt will sort of cook into the pasta. So I'm going to add in a teaspoon of salt to my water. And I'm going to turn on the stove because I know from experience that this stock pot takes quite a while when it's half full to actually boil. So since we are using a large pot, you want to turn it on so that it can start to boil. You don't have to turn it on yet if you're going to take your time making your pasta. And you can always let your pasta dry for quite a while too. You might have seen some, you got it, some drying racks. So there's different drying racks that people will use when they make homemade pasta. So you can let it dry for quite a while. But when we make this in our in-person classes, we definitely don't have the time for that. So we usually cook it up pretty fresh, and it's always very well liked. So it kind of looks like we're making pizza.
Pizza.
You could use this as a pizza dough, but it wouldn't have the same quality that other pizza dough because we didn't add any yeast in it at all. Ooh, ours is looking really good, isn't it?
Well, you're really good. You're so fast.
No, I'm older, so I'm maybe a little more
And you've made this
muscles,
before.
yeah, and I made it before. Also, what I think is that I've built up those
Really
specific rolling pin muscles.
Really stretchy.
Really stretchy. So you want to get your dough really, really thin. The thinner, the better for making pasta. This is looking really good. If you're using one of those pasta machines and rolling it through a pasta press, a lot of times people will do it 2 or 3 times to really kind of get that elasticy thing going. I usually just roll it out with a rolling pin one time, but get it really thin. So you can see, I'm going to lift this up, that I'm getting this very thin, almost paper thin here. It's looking really good.
Mine keeps flopping all over.
Looking really good. Yours is flopping. You want to trade for a little bit?
Sure.
All right, I'll work on yours. You work on this one, because see how it's a little thick still on that side? Try to get it a little more even. Oh, this is good. We're kind of making rectangles, but it could be more like a circle.
Yeah, like
it doesn't have to be a perfect shape because we're going to be using our tools
this is like
to kind of shape the pasta.
it's like as thin as paper.
Almost as thin as paper. This one's getting there. You did a really good job. You had a great start to
I
it.
need to move this.
It's sticking to the parchment roll. If you're rolling it out and you notice it sticks to the parchment roll, go ahead and add a little extra flour. That's totally fine. You don't want to add too much and dry out your pasta, but a little bit will be totally fine and help. I'm finding that ours isn't sticking too much at all. It's really looking good. This looks pretty good. So when you hold it up, you can kind of see your hand through it. You know it's pretty thin, right?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, that looks good. I think we're ready to start making some pasta. What do you think? Yeah? because it takes a little while. And when we've done this in classes, we usually like to give everybody a lot of time for this one because it's really fun. You can start getting really creative. So if you're looking at your style guide, if you printed out our pasta style guide here, two of the most familiar types might be fettuccine and spaghetti, which are, spaghetti is those, you know, everybody knows what spaghetti is, but the thin strips. And fettuccine is very similar, but it's a little bit thicker strip. And making spaghetti with homemade pasta, you're not going to get the exact same shape that when you get like
These two
dried.
are common too. This one here,
The bow tie,
the bow tie,
farfalle, I think that's how you say it.
the penne.
Penne is really good. So we'll try to show some tricks for creating some of those traditional types, but also you can make totally your own creative shape of pasta. The
Wait,
trick is just getting that dough really thin, and when
How
you
does this
have it
work?
really thin, I'll show you that. That one's the crimper. So this one is the pizza
can I
wheel.
use that?
You can use this in just a second. And so you can also use a knife. So you could use, we have our sharper knives and we also have our Kid Chef knives. You could use that. Precision is a little tricky. You're not going to get quite as much precision with that. So if I want to make fettuccine, I'm just going to cut thin, here, I'll go the long way, thin strips. Not too thick, but not
I'm cutting mine into a square or rectangle.
That's
first.
for a rectangle first. Ooh, I like that. And then you can re-roll that extra dough. So these are kind of short because it was the short side of my thing, but these are sort of my fettuccine. I'm going to get a little circle of them going. So you just kind of, with a knife or a roller, I can grab another roller. Now you've cut the edges because it might work a little quicker with the pizza cutter.
Yeah, I need that.
Yeah, you need that? Okay. And then I just usually take the fettuccine or the spaghetti and I kind of just pile it up in like a little pile here.
I'm gonna make spaghetti.
You could be putting it in a bowl.
Where did the cat go?
And you can make all one type of pasta or you can make a couple different types. We're going to show a couple different types because we like to demonstrate how to do
This is
them.
my extra dough. Okay.
All right, that's brilliant. I think that's good on the fettuccine. And if you were making spaghetti, you just do it a little thinner is all. Fettuccine and spaghetti are sort of similar. Now, I was saying when you get the dry spaghetti, it's made from a machine. It's sort of extruded from a special machine. And they do sell a lot of pasta tools, but you can definitely just use the stuff that you find around your house too. All right, so next up, let's try to make the bow tie, okay?
Should I make some fettuccine?
Sure, make a few fettuccine. So for bow tie, you want to make some squares. So I'm going to kind of cut a long, thick strip, just like this. And I'm going to cut those into sort of somewhere between a rectangle and a squarish shape. There we go. So it kind of looks like this. And then you can leave it just like that, or, I'm gonna grab a fork real quick. A fork is another good tool you can use. So you can leave it just like that, or if you want the edges of your bow tie
Do you think
crimped,
this is good enough
you can,
fettuccine?
I just lost a piece on the floor. I think we're still gonna cook it, so
Do you
we'll
think
use it.
this is a good enough fettuccine?
Oh, that fettuccine is great. Can you show it? Can you demonstrate? Look, there's her beautiful fettuccine.
I'll put it by yours.
Okay, yeah, let's put our fettuccine together.
I'm gonna cut.
All right, so what I did was I used a fork to kind of put a little edge on two sides, the shorter sides of this, and then I'm just gonna pinch it in the middle to make a little bow tie. And that's it. And show it up close. And there you have your little bow tie
Can I see?
pasta.
That's so good.
You can also use this pastry crimper if you have one of those on the edges. That'll crimp up your edges. Ooh, that works really nice.
Wait, can I see?
There's a little
Yeah,
bow
yeah.
tie, just like that. So what I'm going to do is make these squares that I cut into our bow ties. So I'll crimp on the edges, just like
I need
this.
the crimp one.
You want me to crimper? Oh, I pushed a little too hard. It came apart. So squish it back there. And then pinch in the middle, just like this. And when you pinch it in the middle, you get that bow tie shape. That's nice. And you can also
Not
just use a
perfect, but it's
you can use a fork too to make those edges on your bow tie. Also, I've seen a lot of times homemade pasta where they don't do the edges. They just make the bow tie without the sort of crimped edges. So you can do it either
Here,
way.
I'll make a pile here. You can set your bow tie.
Oh, you're gonna make a pile of bow ties? Perfect. All right.
I've cut a lot of squares.
You cut a lot of squares. Oh, that's okay, because you can use those squares to make other styles too. All right, another bow tie. All right, I'm gonna crimp those edges and then squish it in the middle. This is so fun, and I would absolutely love, so if any of you are making this pasta at home, or if you do this class in the future and you make it at home, please send us or post pictures.
Yes,
we would
please.
love to see your pasta. I love seeing when I do this class, the creativity, the types of shapes that people come up with is so fun. I love to see what people sort of create with their things
I'm gonna
that they're
do
able
one
to
more
find around
bow
their
tie, and
house.
then I'm gonna do some.
All right, we're squishing this in. I got a bow tie. So now we're getting a lot of bow ties. Let me kind of show our bow ties.
Oh, I'm gonna make
There we
a
have
twirly pasta.
a twirly pasta. Yes. So one of the tools I talked about was a straw. We've got a reusable straw here. So if you would like to make kind of like a penne or oh, what's that one that's curly cute? You know which one? Fusilli. Fusilli is the one I'm thinking of. That's not on the sheet. You could take a strip of pasta, sort of like a little bit of
What if
thicker
you have a
rectangle.
square? The square would work, right?
Square you could do too. And you can just kind of wrap it around your straw, just like that. And then gently
I'm gonna make
sort
a
of
new
pull it
type of
off. I
pasta.
might have had it a little tight. There you go. And now you sort of have a little curly pasta.
I'm making a new type of pasta.
You're making a new type of pasta? Oh, I can't wait to see that. And then if I'm going to make one that's sort of like the penne one is kind of, oh, I think our water is starting to make noise. Yeah, but it's nowhere near boiling. It takes a while. It's a big stack cut. So I'm going to use a thicker rectangle now to kind of show.
So I'm wrapping it around like this.
Square.
Look, I'm wrapping it around like this.
Yeah. Just remember you got to get it off the straw. So.
I know. I'm sliding it off the straw.
So what I've kind of got a rectangle here, and I'm going to start with one of the points and sort of wrap it like that, and then you can sort of get a little bit of a penne shape. And
Well, I'm
you could
making that
use
type of pasta the penne.
a fork to make ridges if you want.
I need to get
One's kind of a fat one, and then you can make it a little smaller. So there's a lot of different ways you can make the pasta. And a lot of it just has to do with your own sort of creativity and what you want to do. A lot of times when you see the shell pasta, they kind of have like a little special tool that you could also use like the end of
I
a
wrapped it
spoon,
around too tight.
the end of a spoon or the end of a fork, and kind of push it in and sort of
I have extra dough.
push it into a little bit of pasta and sort of fold it over. That was kind of a big piece. So you're kind of left with a little bit of a shell.
Wait, is this
shape.
yours?
That one was. I twisted that around the straw.
Let's put it.
Put it over here. Okay. We're getting a whole bunch of different types. Now, in this class, we have definitely cooked different types together. So you don't need to boil a different pot for each type of pasta that you make. It'll totally work. We've done that a lot. And then also remember, they will grow. Definitely the same way with dried pasta where they grow a little bit when you cook them. You know, you put in a box of mac and cheese and all the noodles are so tiny and then whoop, all of a sudden they're big. Same thing happens with this pasta. So when you're making those bow ties, remember, they're going to get a little bigger. They're not going to stay quite the same
I
size.
need a lot of flour for this. I want it to slide it up.
You want to slide it up? Okay. Yeah, she's putting some flour on the straw and the dough so she could wrap it. Another thing is if you have something with ridges, remember we talked about the ridges. So this tool, you can take a little piece of dough, push it along the ridge till it curls on itself and make little pasta that way. That's really kind of fun. Just take a little bit of dough, run along the ridges, and you get this rich sort of shellish like pasta. I think there's a name for this style, but
I put too much flour.
I'm forgetting it right now.
I'm messing this up.
No, that's okay. Keep going. You're not messing it
I'll
up.
make it different.
You're not messing it up. You just need to keep trying.
We'll make a bow tie for this one.
I'm really liking these
Floury bow tie.
little ones. Let's try some on the
What if you made a pasta
Cutter,
that was shaped like a flower?
shaped like a flower.
That'd be cool,
That would be
right?
really cool, yeah. Well, I think we're getting really close to getting this in the water. And like I said, it only takes 2 to 3 minutes to cook. And then just like with dried pasta, you're gonna wanna strain it just like you would with dried pasta. This kind of works. You take a little bit of dough and you sort of run it along a ridged surface.
Ooh, can I
This
try
one's a
that?
little sharp on the bottom, so I'm gonna be a little careful. Actually, I think you can. You can also put it flat.
Okay, I'm rolling it
and
up
run it
like
along like
this.
this.
I'm running it
And
up
make
like
these little.
I can't do it.
And this cookie cutter was actually working pretty well for that. I'm just kind of taking little bits of dough and pushing them on. And I was kind of getting these little ridged shells. It's pretty cool. All right, here's these sort of little ridged shells that I made. I think we should make some more bow tie too. What do you think? Yeah. I hear the water. I think it's getting close to boiling now.
Oh, I think we should make some macaroni.
Macaroni? I bet you could do it with a straw. Oh yeah, our water looks good. Turn it down a little. I think we can add in our first batch because I would love to be able to show before we say goodbye to everybody how our pasta comes out. So let's take our fettuccine and our bow ties and let's cook those.
Who are these?
I think those weren't done yet, but we can take these little ones too. We'll get that cooking. Takes about 2 to 3 minutes, then we can demonstrate what it would look like and we'll even add the pasta. You can taste test it. Sound good?
You mean add the pesto?
Oh yeah, the pesto.
Pasta.
Pasta pesto. So I'm gonna take the lid off. I have the lid on. I'm just gonna use a slotted spoon. You could also use a ladle and sort of gently lower my pasta in. And I'm gonna use my spoon to kind of break it apart because I don't want them to stick together too much, because then I'll just kind of end up with one clump of pasta. Oh yeah, that looks great. So I'm kind of pulling my fettuccine apart. My bow tie's perfect. So they're gonna cook about 2 to 3 minutes, then we'll strain them and add some pesto. And what are you doing now? Can I see the shape that you made?
A circle, sort of.
Sort of a circle?
Half circle.
Half circle. Let's show what it looks like. It looks really cool.
I'm trying to make the same shape. It turns into a triangle this way.
Triangle is cool. She's kind of made like a little triangle pasta here. So you can really get creative and see what things you can find around your house that have edges or ridges or even a measuring spoon end, anything that you can sort of use to push in and shape it. So if you get going on this and you have enough pasta to go in the pot, you can cook a batch and then take your time working on the rest. And it can dry out for 24 hours. You can let this pasta just dry out. I wouldn't even refrigerate it. Just let it dry like on a counter open up to 24 hours and then you can still cook it after that. The drier it is, it might take slightly longer to cook, like maybe 3 to 5 minutes, but it's still, the fresh pasta goes really quick when you're cooking it. And we would love to see pictures of the pasta you guys create. I can't wait. Ooh, I love these little sort of pillow shapes that you have here.
Triangles.
Triangles. And you could also use this same recipe to make a stuffed pasta. So you could use it to make some ravioli or some tortellini.
Ravioli.
Yeah, ravioli. You just would use 2 squares or kind of like these ones you cut. So 2 squares, maybe a little bigger, and then you'd put a little bit of some filling there. Put the other one on top, and you could use a fork or a crimper to crimp all around it, and then you cook it the same exact way that you cook the other pasta, and then you have some ravioli.
I did some different
that's
shapes.
really cool.
Sort
I'm
of
going
like
to show
pineapple.
you. She made it kind of like a pineapple, so she kind of made a shape in the pasta afterwards.
With the fork.
Yeah. You know what type of ravioli I really like is pumpkin ravioli.
Yeah.
That would be really good if you had some pumpkin puree. Our pasta's looking good. One of the ways that you can tell it's done is that it's going to start to rise up to the surface. When I first put it in, it kind of sank down to the bottom, and now it's starting to rise up. It's been cooking for about 2 minutes. I'm going to give it another minute or so. It's looking really close. And we'll strain it. And you can try it out.
I hope Bianca comes down to try that too.
Oh, should we have her come down for some too?
Sure, I'll go. Should I
Do you want to go get her?
Yeah, I'll go get her. Oh yeah, so I'm making these little pineapple versions,
The pineapple versions? Yeah, we'll put those in the pot. So once we get this out and we show what it looks like, we'll go ahead and make the rest of our pasta on our own and cook it. And then we will go ahead and put pictures later today of how our pasta turned out. And we'd love to see how your pasta turned out too. This pasta looks really, really good. I think it's almost ready, but I can tell there's a few that are still a little low in there. So I just want to give them maybe 1 more minute. It looks really good though. There's a few fettuccinis that stuck together, but the rest of them, I separated them out pretty well and they look pretty good. So that's kind of one thing too. If you make them in a couple different batches, you could make it all together if you have a really big stock pot like this. But if you're making it in a couple batches, you can sort of test it out. And if some of it looks a little funky or you're not super happy with how it turned out, you could try making it slightly different, a little different shape, a little different way. So, did you get our other assistant?
Yeah.
Hi, this is my daughter Bianca, who came to taste what we made.
You can also make some pasta.
Yeah, why don't you work on this? I'm going to get your bowls ready, guys.
You can make whatever you want. We have all these tools.
I know.
I'm making these pineapple triangles. Noodle.
Yeah, pineapple triangle noodle. That could be a new style.
I just made it up.
Pasta. I like it. Oh, this pasta looks so tasty.
And we're having this for lunch.
You get to taste test it first, though.
Yeah. I have some more pasta to go in there.
Well, you know what? I think what we need to do now is get all the rest of our pasta made so we don't just keep the water boiling for so long. So we'll kind of take it off the heat for a little bit, and then we'll cook the rest once we have it all finished, okay? I just wanted to cook some so we can show it before we say goodbye. So I'm going to go ahead and show this real quick before I add the pesto. Here's our cooked pasta. And I'm just going to put a little spoon, about a teaspoon on each one, and mix it in. And the hot pasta will sort of warm up that pesto. Get it all mixed together. Now, if you're not a big pesto fan, you could add red sauce to this pasta, or just a butter or lemon butter would be good. Oh, this looks good, guys. All right, let's show. And then before we say goodbye, you got to taste test it and tell everybody if you like it. So there we go. Trying to show it without spilling it. All right, so Isla, Bianca, it's going to be a little hot, so you might want to blow on a bite.
I'm gonna blow. I'm trying
Pasta,
I got a bow.
You got a bow.
I'm trying to blow.
You're trying to bow too? Good?
Not good. Delicious.
Oh, she said not good, delicious. I'm glad to hear that you like it. Now, does it taste salty enough? Yeah, because sometimes, with homemade pasta, it can be a little on the blandish side, but if you have a sauce,
It's a bit slippery too.
it's a little slippery. All right. Well, thank you so much for cooking with us today, everybody. We've had so much fun doing our Facebook Live classes. And we have some exciting stuff coming in May and some more opportunities that you can cook with us. And again, if you haven't done all of our classes, go ahead and check out our website. You can find under online classes all of the information as far as the tools you need. And then all of the classes can be found right here on our Facebook page. And you can go ahead and do them at whatever time works for you. And we would love to see pictures and hear how you like the recipes. And we'll share pictures later in the day too of how all of our pasta turned out. We're saying bye, and we're saying Yummy Sprout out, which is what Isla made up. So bye, Yummy Sprout out. We hope you have a great day.
Bye.